Hello, my dears. I think that we're all collectively surprised that I've had my channel for this long and not yet talked about cringe culture, but we're doing it. We've gotten here. Let's talk about it. Also, audio description for friends who may need it. I am a white person in my early 20s with brownish, blondish, curly hair. I am currently wearing a black sweater and a green flower with shirts on it. A green shirt with leaves on it. And I'm sitting in front of a bookcase that has books on it and some photos on the wall behind me. Not much has changed in my surroundings, and it's not gonna change until early September. Now, before we get into the cringe culture discussion, we're gonna talk about creepiness, because creepy and cringy often tie into each other on some level. And for this section, I read a research paper that was genuinely titled On the Nature of Creepiness. It was wild. I learned a lot. Kind of enjoyed it. Don't remember how I found it. It's just been sitting on my desktop for a year, which is very strange and weird, but I would recommend it. So I will link it in the description for you. Anyway, this study is from July 2015 and it had 1,341 participants, and they all found that creepiness is like the feeling in between disgusted and terrified. Basically, creepiness is an anxiety around the ambiguity of a situation as to whether there is a threat or not, and what that threat may potentially be. And we think of this as giving us chills or being cold because our body actually does make us feel cold when it puts us on guard. A 2012 study found that interactions with people who were showing inappropriate levels of nonverbal mimicry during social interaction produces an actual physical sensation of feeling cold. So that was interesting. Didn't know about that. Now I do. Don't know how it's going to help me in life, but I know. It also talked about how an initial perception of an individual as creepy undoubtedly creates an impediment to comfortable future social interactions with that person. So what we know thus far is that the feeling of creepiness is the feeling of, is this a threat or not? What do I do? And it freezes you in place. Literally, because you feel cold. So what then defines somebody as creepy? Well, get ready to feel really self-conscious, folks, because it's super spicy fun. So they found that people see males as more creepy than females. We're not talking about the issues of the binary right now. We've talked about that before. You can watch it up here. And that females were more likely to perceive creepy people as a sexual threat, that non-normative behavior and actions associated with unpredictability were almost always associated with higher perceptions of creepiness, and that occupations signaling a fascination with threatening stimuli would attract people more comfortable in said environment, and therefore the occupation is seen as creepier. Also related hobbies to said occupation. We're gonna start with the list of the 21 creepiest professions because I found this list endlessly entertaining. There was not a table for the hobby section, but it did vaguely mention taxidermy and liking snakes in that category, so just keep that in your brain. So here we go. Top to bottom, they rated creepiness on a scale of 1 to 5. I will put this on the screen over here for you as well. Here, let me scoot over a smidge. So I am falling off this chair. First creepiest was clown at 3.71, closely followed by taxidermist at 3.69, then sex shop owner at 3.32, funeral director at 3.22, taxi driver at 2.86, unemployed 2.83, clergy 2.57, janitor 2.51, garbage collector 2.25, guard at 2.18, writer at 2.14, actor 2.13, construction worker and computer software engineer were 2.09, cafeteria worker 2.08, financial advisor 1.78, doctor 1.77, college professor 1.67, farmer 1.65, teacher 1.67, meteorologist 1.53. And first of all, what kind of conglomerate of occupations is that? Second of all, why is mortician not on this list? Or detective? Or a scientist? Because who knows what they're up to? Geologists are out there licking rocks. They should be on the creepy list. But anyway, in all seriousness, I find it very interesting that there is a clear class division here. People in occupations that are typically seen as higher class or higher education, such as teacher or doctor or software engineer, were significantly less creepy than writers and taxi drivers and janitors and the unemployed. So keep that one in mind. We're going to get back to that point in a little bit. Now, what else do we find creepy? When it comes to appearance, some of the major things cited were, again, you're about to feel really uncomfortable, dirty clothes, greasy hair, strange smile, bulging eyes, unkempt hair, and dressed oddly. With behavior, it's standing either too far or too close from the person, laughing at unpredictable times in the conversation, relentlessly steering a conversation to one topic, showing too much or too little emotion, appearing anxious, too much or too little eye contact, touching the person a lot, unpredictable movements or tics, and making it nearly impossible for someone in a situation with them to leave without seeming super rude. And I think now you understand where autism ties into this. Basically, creepiness is based on perceived threat, which is typically based on unpredictability. And unpredictability generally means not following social norms, which autistic people either don't or can't, usually a combo. So, as we talked about earlier with the class division in occupation, a lot of the ability to mask in the sense of not seeming creepy has absolutely nothing to do with our actual masking skills. It pretty much entirely has to do with privilege. Something that, for me, as a white, thin, conventionally attractive, typically seen as a woman, despite not being one, human, would be seen as quirky and cute and scatterbrained, and would be seen as terrifyingly threatening in a black man. I mean, we see absent-minded professor people in medicine all the time, and we don't bat an eye because doctors who are geniuses are allowed to just be weird and eccentric, but then when you see, I don't know, a food service worker acting the same way, you typically will find that to be creepy and off-putting. And to quote Dr. Devin Price, I will link his Instagram for you in the description because he's delightful. This is really chilling because I know so many neurodivergent people who have to put extensive effort into not seeming angry, scary, intense, creepy, etc. constantly because white supremacy, fat phobia, etc. mean that they never get the benefit of the doubt. Now, on the bright side, the study did specifically note that the majority of people don't necessarily assume ill intentions from creepy people and believe that most creepy people have no idea they're being creepy. But we will also still likely worry that they are dangerous. And that makes logical sense because you don't want to absolutely sprint away from every human you come across who's a little odd or a little unpredictable, but you also don't want to just willingly stay in the situation if your gut feeling is telling you that maybe it might not be safe. And that's really difficult. And I also think this is a good time to talk about that thing in the autism community that we all pretend doesn't exist, but then we all whisper behind closed doors and we all know very much exists. Autistic people often find other autistic people more creepy than non-autistic people would find those people. Why? Because autistic people tend to be aware that we miss social cues and that missing social cues puts one automatically at risk in social situations, and therefore our guard is always higher in social interactions with new people than it would be for the average non-autistic person, which means that we can, as autistic people, sometimes seem outwardly the most discriminatory towards other people in our community because we have trauma. And I've had several people talk to me about this before, and we were never really able to explain it in a logical manner, other than maybe we're more ableist than we thought, and we're dividing people into functioning levels, and ooh, I hate it and I want my brain to stop doing this. But in the realm of creepiness, it actually does make a lot of sense, and we're going to find things extra creepy if we have trauma related to miscalculating social cues, because the definition of creepy is weird social cues. So I think that what we can learn from this is that you're not a terrible person if you have a hard time socializing with other autistic people, and that they make you a little bit uncomfortable, because it is ingrained in all of us on some level, and it's your brain, unfortunately, but also fortunately, trying to keep you safe from emotional or physical harm, just in a slightly over-the-top, silly goose manner, if that makes any sense. Either way, regardless of your neurotype, creepiness is something to be aware of, for sure. You should definitely pay attention to feeling uncomfortable and try to figure out why that may be, but also figure out if that is warranted or if it's just internalized biases that are preventing you from making some pretty awesome friends. But also, don't put yourself in unnecessary danger, because no. Now that we have creepiness figured out, let's talk about cringe culture. I was not able to find any hard research on cringiness, but that is okay, because I don't know where that last paper came from anyway, and there's more cultural conversation about cringe culture, so there's still a lot to talk about. Basically, cringe it's creepiness without the anxiety portion, kind of. With creepiness, it's a safety concern. With cringiness, it's a comfort or awkwardness concern. Things that are cringy are things that are out of the social norms in a secondhand embarrassment kind of way. Some common examples of cringy things are Disney adults, picky eaters, baby queers, furries. By the way, by baby queers, if you're not in the community, those are the ones who always wear pride-related things in their person at all times and love rainbows. We're not going to go into what makes things cringy because unlike creepiness, which could sometimes be a bit of a safety issue, cringiness is usually just they're enjoying something that's out of the norm and I am gonna judge them for it because it makes me feel better about myself because I'm more normal than that. And I don't like that. I don't want it to exist. Those weirdos are happy and their happiness does not hurt you. It does not hurt anybody else or impact your life at all whatsoever. Just leave them to exist and be weird. Weird is great. And by spending our time judging these cringy things, we're ignoring the actual source of the problem. The fact that so many people don't get to live their lives as their full identities and do all the lovely little things that they're weird hearts want to do because they don't have access to accepting communities or resources in order to find them. For example, your average baby gay that is supposedly cringy, they're that way because they've been told for their whole life or felt for their whole life that something was wrong with them or just off. And now they finally discovered that they are normal and that they aren't alone. So of course they're going to hold onto that identity for dear life and flaunt it as best that they can. Disney adults are often people who didn't get the chance to have the childhood that they dreamed of, so they're doing it now. And also often Disney characters were the only people or animals that they felt a kinship with growing up. I know for a lot of autistic people, Disney is a comfort thing. Picky eaters probably just have some sort of sensory issue, and they're able to handle it when they have control over their own food. All of these cringy things are just actually ways of coping with an unaccepting world, just for us to promptly not accept them yet again. And that's really sad, especially because these kinds of things are pretty much accepted if the person you're laughing at for being cringy tells you that they're autistic. As if their diagnosis somehow suddenly makes their weirdness acceptable, but then everybody else without the diagnosis is bad. And again, the autism community can often be the worst perpetrators of this because we are so used to being teased and left out for being weird that sometimes it can feel like a little bit of a relief to laugh at the different weird group, or at least think to yourself, well, at least I'm not like that. And again, that's likely a trauma response to being continuously rejected or teased for being weird. Everybody gets caught up in the feeling of finally being accepted by somebody at the cost of other people every once in a while, and it happens regardless of neurotype, especially when you're younger. But it's important that we recognize those things and that we recognize why certain things may make us feel uncomfortable and try to unpack that so that we can become friends with more members of our community and more weird people, because I love weird people. So I guess a sort of thesis of this video: feeling creeped out and secondhand embarrassment by people, that's normal. That's natural. That's how our brains try to protect us from the occasional axe murderer. And that gut feeling is sometimes right, and you are so allowed to feel uncomfortable. But it's also important to check that gut feeling and see if we feel that way because the person we're interacting with does genuinely feel threatening, or if they just aren't allowed to follow traditional social norms. Because a person shouldn't need to say that they're autistic for you to accept them as weird as they may be. Because, first of all, undiagnosed people exist. And also, because you should just be kind and accepting no matter what. And non-autistic people should also be allowed to be weird. But also, again, don't seek out danger. Keep yourself safe. That's always a priority. But when you feel uncomfortable, ask yourself why that may be. Because the weird, the creepy, the cringy, these all just target people for expressing themselves. And those people are typically the ones who have identities or experiences out of the norm, and the ones who are challenging the oppressive normative systems that we have in place in an effort to not sound like a social justice warrior. But like, think of drag queens and gender-bending people paving the way for the queer community, for example. Accepting them and all of their weirdness into the fabric of society liberates all of us. So, with that, thank you for listening. Thank you for learning. Remember, it's never too late to start over. Please be kind to one another, and I look forward to seeing you, my dear, in the next one.